of the Boeing 737 crashes. We take this responsibility in this Congress incredibly serious, so thank you all for being here with us today. Before I came to Congress, I worked in a highly regulated space, the medical technology field, where we heeded very strict compliance and reporting requirements to disclose aftermarket or post-market issues that were encountered by physicians, by hospitals, by many stakeholders with our devices. It was a government system, the FDA's Adverse Event Reporting System, sometimes referred to as the MAUDE database. Mr. Pinkerton, I found the voluntary reporting programs you mentioned to be incredibly interesting, and I wanted your thoughts on whether we should have a more structured approach rather than a voluntary reporting system so that, as Captain Sullenberger said, we resolve these risks before we encounter an event. If you would speak to that, and then I'm going to ask a number of you also to speak to whether you think the post-market reporting requirements are adequate from an FAA perspective.
Thank you for the question. And with respect to the structure of our safety programs, I think the voluntary nature, and it'll be great to hear from our union partners on that, but the voluntary nature of it is part of the beauty of it. And Congress has passed statutory protections for voluntarily coming forward. And frankly, that's been a linchpin of our safety management systems and all of these data sharing programs. So I would, I think everything, and we certainly welcome any scrutiny of these programs. I think it's always good to ask the questions, but those programs are working remarkably successfully right now. With respect to the FAA standards on parts, I think they're welcome scrutiny, and that's the beauty of the oversight that you're taking seriously and that you all are performing. The IG, the Secretary has asked for oversight. Again, I think the scrutiny is welcomed. The standards are working very well right now.
Captain Carey or Sullenberger, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we're quite proud of the fact that the Allied Pilots Association, in partnership with the FAA and American Airlines, established the first aviation safety reporting program nearly 25 years ago. It's now known as ASAP. And this has been tremendously successful in averting disasters over the last 25 years. And this program started with the pilots at American Airlines, but now it reaches out to the other stakeholder work groups within the airline industry at every airline in the country.
Let me just add that I agree with Captain Carey and his mentioned earlier about some of the maintenance issues with foreign repair stations and their oversight. Those in particular are troubling. More and more, over time, airlines, for economic reasons, have outsourced much of their heavy maintenance that used to be done in-house by their own employees, supervised by their own employees. Often there was an FAA overseer on the site. Now to overseas locations where if the FAA even has the budget and the staff to make a foreign visit, it's virtually impossible for them to arrive unannounced. There's also a continuing problem within the industry of counterfeit parts. People trying to reuse parts or use parts without a proper provenance, where you know with certainty its history from the manufacturer to its delivery on site and to use in an airplane. So there still are some ongoing systemic issues that have never been resolved.
Ms. Nelson, you mentioned in your testimony the 2006 NTSB results of a study, safety report on the treatment of safety-critical systems in transport airplanes. The NTSB concluded that existing decisions made during design and certification process practices were not subject to ongoing risk assessment and consideration of new information from aftermarket operations and maintenance of aircraft. Do you believe that this 2006 NTSB recommendation has been addressed and implemented by the FFA?
This has been addressed. I would say yes, it has not been fully implemented, and my assumption for the biggest reason that it has not been fully implemented is the funding to carry out those recommendations.
It comes back to funding. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Recognize Representative Stanton for 5 minutes.